So today I wanted to talk about unlisted inventory, or death piles as we often refer to them in the reseller community space. If you've been following me for the last few months, you will know that I have spent countless hours in my warehouse trying to take back control over my business and eliminate all the unlisted inventory that I had accumulated over the last couple of years. Because what had happened to me is I had piles and piles and boxes and mounds of unlisted inventory sitting here in my warehouse that I wasn't processing and I wasn't dealing with. And there's been quite a lot of comments from people who are a little bit worried now that I've got no unlisted inventory. So I wanted to talk about my plan going forward. And I also wanted to just discuss the differences between having a death pile and having a working unlisted inventory pile. So as resellers, we rely on going out to garage sales, thrift shops, Facebook Marketplace, wherever we're getting our inventory from. We rely on going out to those places and being able to buy good quality inventory. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we go out, we don't find anything. Sometimes we're meant to go to a garage sale or a yard sale, and guess what? It's raining and there's no yard sales on that day because it's pouring with rain. So having a working unlisted inventory pile is basically like a set amount of inventory that you decide is the right amount of inventory for your business that's kind of there as a security blanket. So for some people it might be they feel like they need 3 days worth of excess inventory there for them. Some people might feel like they need 2 weeks of unlisted inventory there for them. Some people who rely on garage sales, which might only run for 9 months of the year, feel like they need to have a few months of unlisted inventory there that they can use when it's not garage sale season. But you need to determine that for your own business, and you need to work it on your particular business's needs. Like a conveyor belt of items that stay on rotation, but every single item that's in that working inventory pile is going to get listed. There's no cherry picking from it. There's no leaving stuff out because you don't feel like doing it. It's a working pile. You start from the beginning and you just keep working your way to the end. And the death pile is those piles of unlisted inventory that you bought with good intentions, but something else more shiny came along and distracted you in the meantime. And this other stuff just keeps sitting there and growing, and it becomes a virus into your store, and it sits there. And even though you had those good intentions when you bought it, a lot of this stuff just never gets dealt with, it never gets processed, and it never gets listed. So for some people, the death piles accumulate because there's a fear. There's a fear that there's not enough. There's a scarcity mindset out there. There's too many resellers, yada, yada, yada. For some people, there is a level of addiction. They're addicted to the sourcing part of it. They're addicted to the thrill of the hunt. They're addicted to the fun stuff, which is the going out thrifting and the buying process. They don't so much want to come back and do all the other side of business that they don't enjoy so much. They just want to spend their time doing the fun part. And some people are actually full-on hoarders, and they literally just buy for the addiction of buying. But for me, and I'm sure there's other people like me as well, the reason why I had death piles was because of my lack of processing. I actually was getting these hauls and I just wasn't processing them. I don't really have that love of going out and buying. Quite frankly, somebody brings me the stock and buys it all for me, and I can buy it off them, and woohoo, I don't have to go out and hunt for it. I don't necessarily have the thrill of the hunt, and I don't think I've got a scarcity mindset really either, because I do believe that there's plenty out there. You might have to travel a little bit further afar, or you might have to go and build some new working relationships with different people. But I actually do believe there's an abundance out there and there's enough for anyone, because I truly believe if I had a scarcity mindset, I'd be too nervous to get on here and tell you guys about all the things that I'm buying and selling, because I'd be so fearful that then I would have no business. So I don't believe that's my problem. My problem is the processing part of the problem. And part of knowing why you've got death piles is actually being self-aware. You need to dig deep into yourself and find out, why do I have these death piles? Why am I not processing my inventory? What is it? What is it? You need to dig deep, and you need to be self-aware of your own buying methods and why you're obtaining these death piles. So because I'm self-aware of what my issue is, I've now been able to work out a plan to be able to go forward and take action to make sure that doesn't happen anymore for me. So stage one was I had to actually clean up the mess that I'd created. I had to get it back to a clean slate where there was no unlisted inventory. Now the stage two for me is dealing with inventory as soon as it comes in. So I have to, every single time now I'm buying a haul, I process that haul straight away. Like I can't leave it sitting there because I know that I've got bad habits. I know what I do. I know I go out there the next day and buy more inventory and I know it'll pile up to an amount that becomes overwhelming for me again. Now, what happens when you've got a death pile that becomes overwhelming is it actually hinders you because when it's so overwhelming, you don't even know where to start. And so then what happens is you lack productivity, you lack motivation, you become depressed. It's like a weight that sits on you and you don't know how to get out of it. And the only way to get out of it, guys, is to go one box at a time, one step at a time. But something that I've been learning is that productivity actually creates motivation. So you've just got to be able to get started. And once you start being productive and you start seeing like small changes and you start feeling good, like, oh yes, I've done that box. That creates this, dopamine rush in you. And once you start getting that, it creates more motivation to do more. And so being productive is what causes that motivation. So if you're lacking motivation to get in there and do your death pile, starting to be productive will make you gain more motivation. And then you'll want to do more. And then you'll be more productive and you'll gain more motivation. And when you are being productive and when you are motivated, guess what? It creates happiness and you become happier. So for those people watching who are stressed that I've now got absolutely zero unlisted inventory sitting in my warehouse to work on, it's not really like that, and I'll explain. I know that my problem is a processing problem. So because I know that, I need to make sure that doesn't happen anymore, and I need to be able to build new habits. And it can take a while to build new habits. Sometimes it can take up to a couple of months to really ingrain that new habit into your brain so that you don't make the old habits again and you don't keep repeating yourself. So my new habit is every time I buy something or every time I get a haul, I now have to process that instantly. So it comes into the warehouse and that either that same day or the next day, I'm processing it. I buy it, it comes, it gets photographed, it gets put away on my shelf. And then what happens is it goes into a folder on my desktop with unlisted items. So that folder on my desktop is basically the equivalent to my working inventory pile. So now when I go home, I can be listing my daily amount that I want to keep listing. I can draft some out or schedule some listings for the days that I know I'm not going to be around to physically have time to sit down and list. Or if there's a day where I feel like I just feel really motivated to list and I am in a flow and want to keep listing, well, I don't want to run out of items either. So if I feel in the mode to list, and sometimes I do, sometimes I actually get into a workflow, I get hyper focused and I can easily sit there for 3 or 4 hours and list. So providing I've got the photos done, I'm able to sit there and do that. So let's use an example that I want to list 30 items a day. There's 210 items a week that I want to list. Now, let's say I want to have a working inventory pile of 2 weeks because that's something that I feel comfortable with. 2 weeks feels like a good security. If I was to get sick, if I was to get COVID for a week, whatever the case, it means I need 420 items in my working inventory pile. I don't want to have 420 books sitting in piles here for my working inventory pile. So by having them all processed, the aim is to have 420 books sitting in my folders on my desktop, and they're waiting in a folder now to list. And when I list those books, I start at the first book in the folder on my desktop, and I just keep listing from top to bottom. So it's not like any of those items just sits there and there's no cherry picking from my desktop folder. Do you know what I mean? I just list the first book and I just keep working my way down. And I know that if my waiting to list folder becomes too big, then I can just spend a few extra hours and do some extra listing. Like I list fast and I quite enjoy the listing process when I actually sit down to hyper focus on the actual listing. It sometimes is quite therapeutic. It's not the worst part of the job for me. The worst part of the job is the processing part inside the warehouse and getting it from mess to clean. All the books in these bags are books that I purchased yesterday and the day before. So I've just pulled these all out of my car, and these are now coming in here to process. Now, I don't know exactly how many books are in this pile. I'm going to estimate there's probably 200 listings here between individual books and bundles. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to spend about an hour doing some batch photography. I want to get all this done all at once. It's probably going to take me an hour, I would suspect an hour. And then all of this will be processed and done, and it will just simply go into my working inventory pile of my photos in my folder to list on eBay as soon as I get a chance to sit down at the computer. But my space will be reset to 0. I'll have nothing on the floor that I'm tripping over. I'll have nothing that I need to clean, cull, put away. All those jobs are done. All I'll have left to do is the fun part, which is listing. And what happens when you list on eBay, guys? You make more money. So by processing the orders as fast as I can, I've got more chance of getting that stuff listed and making me money than trying to find that batch time to come in here and sort through the death piles. So everything's just going to work so much smoother and faster for me this year. And I know that that's because I've set myself up by cleaning this entire area, and now I'm ready to go and do all the important things that are going to make me money this year.